In the first part of demoing bikes at the mountain bike festival, I showed you guys the Norco Range Carbon and also the Pivot Mach 5.5. Those were my two favorite bikes, and today I'm going to be showing you the other three bikes that I demoed. In order of how I like them, my third pick would be the Rocky Mountain Instinct 29, fourth would be the Evil Insurgent, and fifth would be the Salsa Horse Thief. As you guys probably already know, I demoed 5 bikes that day, and I liked 4 out of the 5. The only one that I did not like was the Salsa Horse Thief. I'll get into that later. Right now, I'm going to tell you guys what I think of the Rocky Mountain Instinct 29. On the bike that I got from the Rocky Mountain tent, the rear shock was a Fox Float, the shifting was a 1x12 SRAM GX Eagle, and then the front fork was a Fox 34. This bike was also full carbon. At first, I thought by the look of the bike and the feel of it just climbing around that I wouldn't like it. The fact that it climbed really well kind of got on me, like, oh, if it climbs really well, then the downhill abilities won't be as good. The first trail that I took this bike on was Flying Squirrel, which has the biggest jumps in the park. At first, I noticed, oh, this bike is not that good, because the suspension pivot really messed with me, but towards the end, as I started getting used to it more, I kind of liked it. Now the rear suspension, I would much prefer it if it were vertical, but the front suspension felt really smooth and I really liked that. Since this bike took me a while to get used to, I was nervous to try some of the harder trails like Paramount, but eventually I got the hang of it and I did it pretty well. This bike is definitely an all-mountain bike. Like, I noticed when I was climbing that it climbed really well like my bike, but on the downhill, it was pretty good, but there were some spots where a nice longer travel bike would have been better. But overall, I thought it was pretty good. So next we'll move on to the Evil Insurgent. This bike has a really unique frame design and it's also carbon, so it makes it lighter, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Both shocks on the Insurgent are rock shocks, and in the front you're running a RockShox Lyric with 160mm of travel. This bike has a SRAM GX Eagle 1x12, a RockShox Reverb dropper post, and some pretty grippy tires. Now back to the cool frame design, you can see that there's so many different angles and triangles that connect different points on this bike, and I think that it rides pretty well. This bike handled pretty well on all the things that I rode, except for climbing. The only reason that I would never buy an Evil is because it is definitely not worth the price. I think pricing this bike at $5,000 is way too high, especially with the components that were on it. I just don't think it was worth it at all. Anyway, I thought it handled stuff pretty well, like steep sections, technical sections, and jumps. I just think the pricing really destroys the value of this bike. It was really fun to ride on big stuff, and I had my confidence really high. I could get used to this bike pretty fast, and I thought that the suspension did a really good job absorbing my hard landings. This bike probably took a really long time of designing and picturing things, and a lot of planning to see if it worked, but I think it's pretty good. So now I'll move on to the bike that I thought was flat out bad. The people who designed the Salsa Horse Thief really needed to put some more effort into their planning. The bike just feels heavier than it should be, even though it's carbon, and the shifting was off. Another thing that really annoyed me was that the people at the salsa tent didn't even realize that the dropper was broken. I felt like the people that were running the bikes at the salsa tent also just didn't care. I asked them for a bike with a lot of travel, and they gave me the Horse Thief, which has 140 in the front and 120 in the rear. I saw this other really cool orange and yellow fade model, and that easily looked like it had 160mm of travel, and I even saw it in my size, so I don't even know why they didn't give that bike to me. I only took this bike down one run, which was Semper, after I got used to it on Voodoo, and I thought it was so bad that I had to return it instantly. I don't know why. I even like my hardtail that I used to have better than this. It just felt really sluggish around corners, and it felt like it couldn't jump, and it didn't absorb any of the landings. There were some benefits to this bike, like the ability of its climbing. If I had not had a broken dropper post, I'm pretty sure I would have gotten to experience the climbing ability, but the dropper was broken, so I couldn't. This bike kind of handled technical downhill well, just like the Braveheart steep section, and I thought it was fine. It was better than average, but that's probably the only benefit that I would say this bike had. Thank you guys for watching these 3 bikes. The next videos that I'll be posting will be of Whistler Full Trails, so I hope you guys enjoy that.